Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And I bet you know what I'm going to say. Today was an inside day. It was an inside day, and it was an inside day. There is so much new ideas out there. There truly are. And you know where they get dug up from? To each one of us, we really have a appetizer platter to taste and to explore and to feel out and to resonate for ourselves because they're so contradictory in a lot of them, but it's in that cross wiring, and it is in the idea that we are in a time of change. There is no doubt in my mind that we are moving forward. And when I say moving forward, you guys know I'm a big fan of, right, history. But part of history is our very own evolution, right? And because we're in this age of AI learning, oh my goodness, they created a cell, like one of my favorite guys that I trust to grab this information, genetically engineered, right? Like like totally created in a lab. They created an actual cell. And if you've ever seen a microscopic, highly microscopic picture of a cell, you would actually see how mind boggling it is, right? How many bits and pieces are with it's like its own little hemisphere, right? Not even a hemisphere. How about universe? It's like its own little universe, just one cell, and they actually created it. It's just a confirmation as to how fast we are moving. Oh my goodness, it just makes my brain boggle. It really does. At the same time, it's super interesting, but I don't want to get so involved in evolution that I lose sight of the present, right? That I lose sight of this life that I have for myself right now. I understand our evolution is moving fast, and we're either going to move with it or we're going to stall out and be forgotten and left behind. I believe that, right? It is in that idea of, right, who's moving forward and who's staying backwards. And I'm a true believer it takes all kinds to make the world. It's just not going to be the brainiacs. It's just not going to be those scientists who create those cells, or those engineers who make the space rockets, or the people who explore the ocean floor, right? It's all kinds to make the world. And the reason I say that is just in the example of my own experience in all of this and how far I've come, you know. And it's not in an egoistic idea in any way, but it wasn't just in that willingness to be pulled into it. Who would have thought that a baby boomer would have gotten involved in the computer age, the age of, right? The digital age, because that's when I came in. The digital, we are in the AI learning age now. And who's to say what that's going to be a year or two from now? Because that's how fast we are moving. And, it's not, I'm sure, the way the Neanderthals, right, integrated and synthesized with the Homo sapiens. That took thousands and thousands and thousands of years to happen. But where we're sitting right now, like, this is so crazy fast. I don't know if you feel it, Tammy, but I certainly do. It boggles my mind just to think where I was 20 years ago and how, right? Where was the miracle along the way that pulled me into this age of AI learning? Being a baby boomer born in 1961, right? That, to have that opportunity and to have a curious enough mind to want to be pulled into it, and then also to apply my funds, right? Like my money, my pool of money, because, being in this age or digital age, it's not really cheap, is it? Computers and laptops and telephones and cameras and microphones and tripods. This is just in my own category. Forget the scientists and the medical fields or the teachers, what they're using, what they're utilizing in their professions, right? But somehow I did, and I am so grateful for that. I couldn't even begin to imagine. Well, I guess I could imagine, but what I'm imagining is not pretty as to where I would have been if I didn't allow that, if I didn't ride those waves, if I didn't adapt and conquer, if I had given up because I wasn't good at it, right? I did it. Well, why did I first come on to computers? It wasn't for YouTube because I was on the computers before YouTube even came into the picture. I guess it was because I'm printing off resumes and I needed to create resumes online because I needed an email, right? Outside of my flip phone. Right? I don't know what it was, but I'm so grateful that I have, you know, progressed the way that I have. Am I an expert in it? No. I feel that I'm a communicator. I am somebody who does ride the waves, that does adapt and conquer. And because my belief that it takes all kinds to make the world, right? Maybe that's why I was invited to this party because I'm not letting the hairy scary, the titsy turvy, the crazy town to stagnate that curiosity, right? How the history ties into the present and how the present is actually being tied and joining forces with the future because the future is happening right the future is happening right now 100%, and it is a ride, isn't it? It is a ride, but it is wanting to the very least to try, right? To have that enthusiasm and curiosity to want to know what's going on. What can you do? Right? And there were lots of opportunities for people to join in, to be introduced to it, to see if it would be flavorful. Like I was saying over COVID, where everybody, right? You were 80 years old, 90 years old, right? You were 10 years old. You weren't going to school. You were locked up in the house, right? And kids had to entertain themselves, and parents would much rather than being much rather than being on the computer with a curious mind than playing video games, because that would have been the only option at that point, because the parents obviously still needed that space. And right, like screaming kids, fighting kids. I remember what it was like when I was a kid, right? You know, all us girls in my family, we all were different. We all were had different interests and different lives, and but we fought all the time because we were a kind of a private family. In truth, my parents weren't big socializers. um, Maybe my dad a little bit outside of the house. Uh, but my mother wasn't a very social person at all, except when she was involved in her church and in her job, right? But, you know, in being that isolated family, I spent a lot of time with my sisters when they were home, and we were always fighting, right? Always, always fighting, and loud and rambunctious. You guys heard me tell you many times that we were like feral kids, right? Life was an adventure. And, we took after my dad. My dad had congenital heart failure. He didn't think he was going to live very long. That was the prognosis. And, even though he wasn't expected to live much past 20 years old, not even long enough to get married and have kids, he got to have that experience. And he actually got to live to be 47 years old. But he woke up every single morning knowing that today could be the last day. So that's what he did. He lived for the day. Every day was an adventure, and he took his family along for that adventure. And yes, he might have been a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Irresponsible, maybe, you know? But he did the very best that he could, right? With what he had. And he always made life an adventure for us. And he always made us understand and feel how much he cared and loved us, right? And I think in the end, that's the most important thing ever. I couldn't imagine growing up in the experience that I was having in my own life that I didn't have that adoration of my father. And that's the truth. And that's why the family units are so important, because it's too much work, it's too much responsibility for one parent to do the job. The television's got to be the babysitter, the video games have got to be the babysitter, YouTube's got to be the babysitter, right? Mom's off at work cuz right, it's usually the moms that still get custody of the kids, right? If they're even in relationships at all, and they're trying to put milk on the kids' cereal. That's a huge responsibility. And that's a huge stress when the kids are looking forward to that love and attention and that adoration, right? From a mother or a father. And because there's that exhaustion, right? From having a hard day, or that worry about putting the milk on the kids' cereal, or the roof over their head, or paying the bills. And at the same time, maybe having a social life themselves, right? Looking at a second relationship, third relationship, fourth relationship, right? To bring somebody into the family to help take that load off, right? And sometimes when you're looking at it at that way, you're not normally looking for somebody for love, right? You're not looking for somebody for yourself. You're looking for that second parent. And that's a sacrifice, right? That's a sad sacrifice. And it's important that when we look at partners, we're looking at those partners, right, for ourselves. Number one, yes, you're looking for maybe a mom or a dad for your children, but you're looking because you love those kids, and those kids aren't going to be your next partner's children. You're not looking at the idea, are they going to love my kids? You're looking at the idea, are they going to take care of my kids? Are they going to feed my kids? Are they going to dress my kids? Right? Are they going to raise my kids well? But it's the mother, it's the father who's going to instill that secure, like, because that's what it felt like to me, like something secure, something safe, something like home, something I could depend on, right? In having my father in that house. Now I wasn't there all the time because, like I said, my dad lived every day like it was his last day in his life. And yes, he took his family along for that adventure, but he was the priority. And each one of us has to be that priority in creating the best life for ourselves as we possibly can. Because we're no good to anybody else unless we are, right? We're that person that somebody could depend on and feel safe and secure, loved, right? And so we want our partners to feel that way. We want everybody to grow up feeling that way. And it's sad because we live in a hairy, scary world, right? Kids are growing up in crazy town, not just crazy town, crazy homes, right? And they're growing up with lots of problems. And I'm going to have to say, like, my generation has got to take a big part of the blame for that. Not to say that we're not getting better, because lots of people, they do better by their children because of the experiences they have. They say, well, I'll never not make my kids feel like they're loved, right? I'll never let my kids be feral. They're going to be good students. And then what happens? We become controlling in that. And then our children become like little mini me's, right? And that's the epigenetics just being passed down. We say we don't want to be our parents, but we learn these things when we're little kids, right? They're just instilled into us. And we can say as much as we can that we are not gonna be that example for our kids, that our parents were in those examples for us. But you got to remember, as much as there was crappy stuff in our upbringings, there were beautiful things too. And life is not a box of chocolates. You can reference it that way. I reference it like an appetizer platter, right? The choices of what's on that platter. And for myself, I took the choices of the best that I could find in my mother, that I could emulate in myself. And I did the same with my father, right? But he wasn't around a lot because he was living his life to the fullest, right? In his own adventures. But when he was home, he was all about his family. But I have to say, we gotta learn to do a little bit better by the kids, and not leave it to the school system to be the babysitters, to be the parents, right? That all the kids will grow up in that case just being a mirror image of the person that's sitting in the desk beside them, or a mirror of their teachers, right? And where's the uniqueness in that, right? Where's the uniqueness in that? It's food for thought, 100%. But as the world is moving forward at this speed, these are questions that we should be asking ourselves, and we should be looking at solutions instead of agitating the country next to us. Why don't we just invest that time, invest that money, invest that attention in the next generation, so that we don't find ourselves in those same doo-doos that the last generation found themselves in, right? I'm not going to preach on that, right? Because there are a lot of parents out there doing a fantastic job, right? But when that one parent who's doing a fantastic job sending their child to school, they're sending that child to school amongst a lot of other children that might not have gotten that good parenting. And you got to remember, we are who we surround ourselves with. And they could be the best children, the best students, the best morals, right? Dreams, goals. But if their friends are not like that, they're going to end up, right? That's just that idea of one bad apple ruins the whole bunch more, right? And it's the truth. Even for myself, I can see so many circumstances and so many periods in my life, in the relationships that I had around me, and being that people pleaser and that codependent, and where my value and self-worth came from what other people thought, that I would emulate whoever wanted to be my friend in the moment. And normally they wouldn't want to be my friend, but because I had that personality where I was going to stumble over myself and do flips and cartwheels and all kinds of acrobats just to keep somebody in my life, it was always beneficial for somebody to spend a little bit of time with me, right? Over the years, I got a little bit better in, in that hypervigilance, some of those skills that we unintentionally learn along the way. In my hypervigilance, I got to recognize in that who I should be around and who it might not be a good idea. My parents certainly didn't have any opinion as to who I hung out with, right? But, after a while, I got to be a judge for myself, and I usually judged it by where I felt safe, right? And then just feel out whether or not they were kind or not, right? Still knowing that I was still going to do those acrobats just to keep somebody in my life. But I did learn to choose a little bit better about who I surrounded myself in my limited appetizer platter of choices, right? There are always choices. Let me come into the comments here for a minute. I just heard that too, Cindy, about a couple of days ago. They talked about it as a news story on Michigan radio that I love to listen to. That was amazing to hear. You're talking about the cell, the fake cell being created. My mind went straight to the idea of, I have this idea of, people look back and they wonder in their faith and in their religious ideas and their spiritual ideas that it's something from the past. Yes, in a way that it is. It's our ancestors' beliefs, right? Our ancestors' ideas, our ancestors' revelations from the past. But, in that misrepresentation of what they thought the future was going to be like, who would have thought that they didn't even know what a cell was, right? They didn't even know what a cell was. And if you put them in a hospital, right, way back then, just for a half an hour, just say, okay, you get to see what the future looks like, they would think they were in outer space. They might think, because of all the miracles and injuries being fixed in a hospital, that they were in heaven because of all the miracles, right? All the miracles. And now you hear about cells being created in a laboratory, and you're going, oh my goodness. You tie that into, right, this age of technology, and you do this synthesis of maybe a little bit of bio, meaning human, a little bit of what's being created in the lab, and then a little bit of what's being created in a manufacturing plant, and you put it all together, and then you could have somebody like me sitting here, right? And you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. In this moment, right? I watch a lot of content out there, right? They are not so perfect that I could not read in 5 seconds when I'm coming into a digital character 100%. I spot them right off the hop. And I think most people can, right? But who's to say in the future? So my idea, I get all sci-fi and stuff, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's why it's so important for us to be genuine online, right? Why it's so important for us, because they're bots in everything. I went into a flyer to see what I was doing, my grocery budget, my minuscule little grocery budget. I'm trying to eat healthy. I can't even eat healthy because everything's so expensive. But it's not about that. But I went in to look at a flyer online, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, right? Bots are absolutely everywhere. And then, because now they have to ask your permission, right? And I never give them their permissions for anything, right? Like if you look me up online, you'd have a hard pressed time finding me. I'm like invisible. Every once in a while, I Google myself and stuff. I can't come up with a picture or my channel. Nothing. It's cool, right? But in this thought, in being online, this is all info. This is all my conversations, the way I present myself. It's important for me to be genuine, because somewhere's down the road might be the way we're going now, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, maybe 1,000 or 100,000. Who knows? Because we are human, and we could end this tomorrow in our stupidity, right? But to be recreated in our existence, in that synthesis of what they can pull out of our bones that are buried in the ground, what they can create in a lab, right? What they can create in a manufacturing plant, and what the bots online and pulling all that information and mannerisms, right? That's why it's so important for us to be genuine. Is it possible that whoever or whatever is not somewheres back there, somewheres up there, somewheres down there, but somewheres far into the future that has already got it all figured out? that sci-fi brain of mine going on. And I just thought, like, this is just mind-boggling how fast we are moving, right? I have no doubts if I keep up in my health, and you guys, another little miracle. My iron pills are bringing down my blood pressure, right? I was anemic because of my my iron that I wasn't taking, and I should have been taking. And I thought I had to take blood pressure pills, but I might not have to take blood pressure pills because my blood pressure is pretty close to normal this week. It's kind of incredible. Now it's all up to my doctor, right? But I'm keeping tabs on it and I'm making a note of, what my blood pressure is every time I go and get it checked, and we'll see what she says, if maybe it was attributed to my that idiotic, I can't believe I did that, not taking my iron supplements, right? And I knew I had to, but somewhere's along the line I forgot. Right? And then the little things that I attributed to my bad eating habits was just not having the proper supplements or eating the products that were rich in iron. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I thought that was so neat. I didn't know if it was on the news. I have this gentleman's name, Anton Petrov, and he keeps up on all this stuff. And every once in a while he'll put something out there, and he explains it really well. I think he's Russian. I think he's Russian or German, one of those Slavic countries maybe, but super super smart. And so when he puts something out, I usually stop and take a gander as to what's being discovered going on in the world, right? That's right, Cindy. Like I say too, we have to jump on the bandwagon or get left behind. So I have jumped on the bandwagon quite a few times in my lifetime too. I had to many times. It is a must, right? It is a must. But why is it a must? Right? Like I always feel like I got led into it. Like something or someone took my hand and just said, "Come on, Cindy, follow me." And just because I said, "Okay," here I am, right? Uh, Hi, Eugene. Nice to see you here tonight. Thank you so much for popping in and hanging out with me. I had a whole bunch of topics of discussion. I've just been like, oh, I've gone through a whole doodle book of notes here. Just like I said, it's just like a appetizer platter out in the world this week, and I've just been kind of jotting down topics of conversation that I was going to bring up this week. And again, in those things that come across my path, they say this week is a week of change. But being a week of change, it's a week of digestion, not expression. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to divvy out brand new topics here. I'm all ready to go, and I'm being told just to digest, just to take it in and let it settle in. Oh, okay. Because I felt it to be true in the moment, because I noticed that was so much, right? And it's that idea not to jump into new things before it's even settled in our new, right? Or these new ideas are settled in our systems. as truth and perspectives and beliefs, right? Um, yeah, my dad would have loved all this technology, Tammy. He would have thought it was the greatest thing ever. He loved it, right? He had those big amps and the record players and stereos. He had his 6 foot high speakers and his big earmuff headphones, and he would sit there and listen to his classical music and read his books. Right? He had his big 2001 Space Odyssey television set. It was a cool looking. It'd probably be worth a super fortune to see it because it was just like white. It just looked like something out of 2001 Space Odyssey. Very modern for the 70s and 80s when it was created, eh? But he loved that stuff, and he would have thought this was so amazing. But he would have gotten stuck in it too, desperately stuck into it because nowadays you can go to the local bar to play VLTs, and you guys know my dad was also a gambling addict, right? And he'd go and play blackjack and poker, but you had to kind of make it a night out and go to the casino if you wanted to play those table games. I don't think the slot machines, my dad didn't make it that far, right? I think it was very early 90s before the slot machines came into the bars and into the casinos, right? Or you had to go right out of your way to play them, and my dad would have gotten stuck if these things were available to him in the local bars. He would have been in a really bad situation because he really, really did love to gamble. Everybody in my family loves to gamble. I'm the only one who got off of it. Grateful, grateful, right? Oh, great. I can't even express how grateful I am. I couldn't even imagine where I would be right now if I was still gambling, right? It's in our choices, right? It's in our choices. And I chose to be a YouTube creator, right? A healthy addiction. But I don't want to get so in the thick of it that I lose that quality about myself where I enjoy my life. We talked about it. That was our word yesterday, happiness, right? That I want to love what I'm doing always. And I don't want to be pressured into doing more than what my capacity is, right? But if anything, today was any signal as to what my capacity is, I wouldn't have a problem. Oh my goodness, I was gobbling this stuff up like popcorn. I must have made like at least 6 or 7 pages of notes here, not to mention everything I was Googling and all the perspectives I was sitting in on, and then in between, like I said, I was doing my grocery list and my budget, right? Being responsible in taking serious, like, if it wasn't for what I'm doing here, if it wasn't in stumbling on to mindset, motivation, inspiration, in being a YouTube creator, my life would have been a total mess. There is no doubt in my mind, right? That you know there were some aspects of coping mechanisms I would never have touched. Like I would never have been a drinker. I worked in bars and nightclubs for over 15 years and was never really a drinker in any way, maybe a social one every once in a while. But really, that was a miracle in itself. But I've more than made up for it for every penny that I made, I put into those video lottery terminals in my gambling addiction. And, I caused a lot of damage before I was able to overcome that one, right? But again, it's in our choices, isn't it? And each one of us gets to make the choice, but it's that idea of being that example for others. And sometimes I get a little discouraged because I can't even be that example for my sisters. They all know that I don't gamble anymore, but they all still gamble, right? It's still something that they love to do. Like they love to gamble. Even my mother loved to gamble. She loved the slot machines. It was just a family affair. Yeah. Okay, you guys, let me come down here into the comments before we grab a card. Um, Right on, Cindy. I totally agree with you on that. Investing into this generation and the next two, it would truly be worth it. I see other countries who invest in their youth and spend the time and money. You know what? I stumbled on to an article, oh, it must have been about a month ago. In Korea, they don't let the bullies go to university and college, right? If a child wants to grow up and be a doctor or a scientist or an engineer, you have to go to university and get your degrees and stuff for this. They don't just look at your grades. They don't look at that. They look at who that person was. Were they kind to the other students? Were they polite? Were they on time? Were they right? So they look at the whole package. And so the children have got, if they have goals and dreams, they have a set aspect of rules that they have to abide by, right? And I don't know how I truly feel at by that, because when I first read the article, I went, "Oh my goodness, that's absolutely amazing." Right? That the mean boys and the mean girls that, they get these grades and their parents have lots of money that they get to make something of their lives. And then somebody who doesn't have anything and they're just struggling by, that they're not able to make their own goals and dreams come true for themselves, right? And it seems so unfair, and it is unfair, but I think it makes it so everybody's more on an even playing field. Rules and laws and power are always going to be here in some way or some form. But the small man in this age that we live in has now got a voice, don't we? We all, right? We all get to have a voice. And in that majority rules, right? If somebody steps too far out of line, it's going to be sorted out. It's going to be sorted out. But I say, like, if we're sorting things out, if we're in crazy town right now, this is the best time to make a mess, to clean a mess, because it's messy already, right? It's messy already. It was just like when things weren't going well in my life. Just let everything go bad for me. Let's just get it all sorted out right now so that you don't ruin my summer, that I can have a fun summer, or next year will be better, or when I grow up, it will be better, right? That's what I tell my sister. She feels bad because she's all laid up with a broken foot. And, she just had heart surgery. She's got diabetes issues and stomach issues. And just, right? And I said, well, you know what? Let's just get it all over and done with now. Let's just deal with it now. Get on top of it now. That maybe you can have a beautiful fall, or next year will be better, instead of having this issue to deal with next year after you've just gotten over this one. Bring it on. Bring it all on now, right? If it's not something that's so overpowering that's going to take you out, like, let's get it all dealt with now. This is the way I think, right? But again, it's in our choices, isn't it? Okay. It blows my mind, Cindy, all this modern technology and all the inventions and discoveries. Well, it's that idea that it can be taken away at any moment. So everybody's going 1,000 miles an hour with it. They're running with that baton because, like I said, the floor of it all could just drop out at any moment, right? I feel that too, right? I feel that too. But it's again, it's going to be in our choices. And I don't think those choices say that we need to be the expert on everything, that we have to be on top of everything. It's just allowing our curiosity and those breadcrumbs and serendipities, and those little intuitions, and those thoughts that come to us to say, oh, let's check this out. Let's see if we like this. It's just that idea of enjoying what you do, being being happy in what you're doing, and being a good steward for your family, your next door neighbor, the kids at school, your community, your city, your state or province, your country, your continent, your world, right? And it doesn't mean you have to have it all, but right, just like me, I go and pick up some garbage off the boulevard that it's getting spewing all over the place. That's a little bit of being a steward to the world, right? That's my little bit of contribution. And I don't think that they're asking me to save the world and put on a cape or anything like that. But it's just to show that you want to be here, you have something to contribute. And I think we do a pretty good job at that, Tammy, right? All included in that one. Um, there is cloning going on that started back a few years ago when my mother was alive. She loves her beloved cat Mindy so much. She wished she could have gotten her cloned. That cloning will only work for so long, but I'm thinking, to have the same cat for your entire lifetime, you know. Uh, I've had a lot of cats in my life. I'd have to say probably maybe 10 cats. And I loved every single one. Everyone had a different personality and offered a little bit of comfort and a little bit of love and a little bit of personality that was a little bit different from each one of them. And, I appreciated them all, but in cloning the cats, right? This last cat that I had was absolutely just perfect for me, right? Yeah, it was the perfect cat. I never took me so long to get over a pet as it was with that last cat of mine, Meatball. Yeah, she was an absolute sweetheart. But then again, I think of all the ways she played in her cat litter box, and I was constantly cleaning that box and sweeping the floor, right? And the stink in the house from, right? Stinky cat litter boxes. So there's good and bad in it all, right? But yeah, cloning the cats, cloning the dogs. I only heard it once in Michigan radio about that Sal News story. Yeah, yeah, right. It's fairly new. Like, you know, Anton, he, as soon as he got that idea, he would have been on making a video and he would have had it up and running within a few days for sure because it's such a competitive uh, category that he would have to get his voice out there before somebody else, otherwise people are going to say, oh, he's a copycat, right? He's just copying his content. I've got my copycats surprisingly, but then again, sometimes I think that I'm catting other people because I'll go in after I've done a live show or a podcast, and then I'll go in and I'll watch somebody else, and there's somebody else who's got the same content almost to the T as what I do, but they put theirs out like 2 weeks ago. And this is the first time I'm watching it. So it wasn't like I was copycatting, but if you were to see it, you might think that way, right? So I find it all very curious. It's just all the way that we're wired now, right? We're so synthesized with what's going on in this age of AI learning that we're all zigged up now. Uh, Great job, Sydney. You finished reading all the comments. I did, didn't I? Let me have a sip of my coffee, grab my cards before anything else happens. Yeah, I had all kinds of topics, and then when I came in, I said, "Oh, but they said, let's just digest it all without, just putting a voice out there right off the hop." And I went, "But I got all these notes. It's all digested. I got all these notes going on, right?" But maybe it's that idea to digest it so that when I do put it out there, I don't have to use a point list, right? That I could just be Cindy and do it in my own way. Okay, you guys. 54 powerful words. Yesterday we had the word happiness, and these are all powerful words, and sometimes they're relevant to our conversation, sometimes they're not. We talked a little bit about the technology, a little bit about evolution, right? Right? A little bit of Sydney's sci fi ideas, give you a little bit of insight to how my brain works sometimes. And yeah, here we go. First perspective, first thing that comes to my mind. We'll just go into it for a couple of minutes and we'll call it a night. Movement is an action that gravitates to the result. You know, this word movement was part of my notes today. So I find it curious that I'm supposed to be digesting. And here it is, the cue card here that says, right? This movement that we're making in this age of AI learning, right? It isn't that hairy scary that the floor could drop out from underneath us and this opportunity to make some movement forward might become out of our grasp. It won't be part of that appetizer of those interests and those curiosities and those topics, right? Those inventions that we'll have to be able to make that movement in our old ways, in that pure action, that physical action, rather than relying on the digital age, right? To rely on, I use, right? Gemini all the time. I love Gemini and pretty bang on. I actually, here's a good example. I was curious about what's going on with the Ebola, and I wanted to see if there were any cases outside of Africa going on. And Gemini says, "Okay, I'm thinking, right? Okay, it's thinking." And usually it takes a few seconds, and its bots have gone through all the information going on. But it was just like a buffer. It was just going on, and every once in a while come back on and say, "Just a few more seconds, just a few more," right? And so I decided to pull up a new window and check out something else while it was thinking. And that was the longest it ever took Gemini to get back to me in a question that I had to ask, right? Was I wanted to know if there was any Ebola cases outside of what was going on in Africa. It turns out, yes, there were two isolated cases, one in Germany and one in France. But it made me curious as to why it took like 5 minutes for it to be able to get that answer to me. And so it made me a little bit, right? Oh, right? What is stopping that answer? Because it's a simple yes or no. I heard about the one in France already. I heard about that one in France, but I didn't hear about the one in Germany. So it's that idea that, that some information is not getting to us as quickly as we would like it to. And we depend very much in this age of AI learning. And I think, because again, we feel that that floor is going to be dropped out from underneath us, that we're producing our own stage of evolution. We're triggering it to happen right now. It won't be a physical evolution, right? It's not the last of our tailbones are going to disappear, right? That we're all going to end up bald headed or anything right off the hop, but it's our brains, right? It's our capacity because we only use like 10% of our capacity of our brains. That, right? It's going to be like that movie Lucy, where we're going to be using like 80, 90, or 100% of our brain. And then can you imagine how fast we would be moving at that point? But maybe that was the idea. That's maybe why we didn't go extinct in 2012, like everybody was saying. The idea was to make it as far as we could into this digital age where all this technology, where all this knowledge, where all these resources that we want to be able to ask these questions and these questions be answered, that we would make it to this day and age. And guess what? We made it. We got invited to the party of our next stage of evolution. Just an idea that I'm throwing out there. Movement is an action that gravitates to the result, right? And that's that idea of that appetizer platter. Each one of us gets to make the choices where our curiosity has taken us. But it's just not a matter of sitting there and being curious and absorbing information. It's about putting those thoughts and those ideas into action so that we can find those cures for cancer before the floor falls out from underneath us, right? That we will know how to create cells for people who have these diseases, these illnesses that don't have cures in the moment. That, yes, at some point that we might be synthesizing with something that's created in a lab, right? It's possible, but we won't know that unless we put that action towards, right? What we're curious about, what we're asking about, or what's asking us in our willingness to be forward or to be willing to have a curious mind to ask these questions, right? So that person that was supposed to cure cancer, right, cures cancer, right? Because movement is an action that gravitates to that result. That's all I've got for you tonight, you guys. I'll be back tomorrow. I take Saturdays off, so I won't be here on Saturday. But if you guys want to come and hang out on my other live show that I do, Chatters Live, every Sunday night, 7:30 Central PM, you're more than welcome. I got big chatters over there. They chat more than I do. And Tammy's part of that crew, or she's part of that instigator of the chatter over there too. But you guys are more than welcome to come and hang out. Start the pizza man. Oh my goodness. Have a great night. Thank you, Tammy. Bye bye.